Greetings and welcome to the Randstad RiseSmart Career Podcast, helping you transform your everyday work life into an exciting and rewarding career. My goal is to provide you with the insights, tools, and ideas you need to have a successful career. And this podcast is designed for everyone, whether you are entering the corporate world or have many years of experience. In today's episode, we have co-authors Belle Liang and Tim Klein, featuring ideas from their book, How to Navigate Life, the New Science of Finding Your Way in School, Career, and Beyond. They talk about both identifying and understanding your purpose. Now, many of us have heard this word purpose before, and it can sometimes come across as altruistic or like some sort of higher calling. Luckily, Belle and Tim set us straight with their approach. For them, the elements of purpose include your skills, your characteristics or character strengths, your core values, and the needs of the world that you feel compelled to impact. From there, they help us discover what each of those elements are in reality with some pretty deep questions. They get at our needs and our goals for now and in the future. Join me for this really interesting and insightful conversation. You may even want to take notes. So welcome, Tim and Belle. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to talk with you. And you two have written this book, How to Navigate Life and the New Science of Finding Your Way in School, Careers, and Beyond. We definitely need guidance like that in our careers for that career and beyond period for sure. Tim, you want to get us started? Tell us a little bit about where you took the book and what the motivation was.
Yeah. So, Belle and I, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Belle's a psychologist. And so we've both been working in K-12 and higher education for our entire careers. And so I was a school counselor for a long time. And, we were working with students and these students are working super, super hard. And we came to this realization that we tell young people and people starting out their careers what they should be doing all of the time: get great grades, extracurriculars, do all the community service, be the captain of your sports team. But there's this big thing we've never taught young people how to do, and that's how to decide what they want to do with their lives. We've never taught them how to make big, meaningful decisions about what impact they want to make on the world or what profession that they want to go into. And so, using Belle's work out of Boston College, we identified what we call this college and career navigation crisis, where people are really struggling to figure out how to navigate work, school, and life. And so that's why we wrote the book, to try to provide evidence-based resources to help people navigate these huge decisions.
So Tim, that's interesting. You're helping people make those decisions. And you're right. I can think back to even when I was in college several years ago now. There wasn't a whole lot of guidance in terms of making career decisions. You were just expected to declare something and follow it. Belle, what are some of the things that you do to help guide people in making these big career decisions at such an early point in their lives?
So we think of purpose as kind of like a compass. It helps us to make decisions. It helps us to navigate when we don't know where the destination is. It helps us to move in the right direction. But purpose is sometimes kind of a lofty word that can be very intimidating. And, if you ask people what their purpose is, many of them feel like they don't know what it is. And so what we do in our work, in our research, and in our book is to really break down purpose into what we call the elements of purpose, because there are parts to this purpose that we can really grow in and learn in and become much clearer on. And those 4 elements of purpose are the character strengths, the strengths that make you your best self. The second one is the skills that you're motivated to master and to learn in your life. The third is the core values that you stand for, that you're willing to sacrifice for. And the fourth is the needs in the world that you're compelled to contribute to or to address, to impact. And so what our work does is to really help young people and older people alike, no matter where they are on their career journey, to really discover more about those elements of purpose. And together, in a combined way, they form our purpose.
And what are those 4 elements? Can you list them again for the audience?
Character strengths, or the strengths that make you your best self. skills, which are those skills that you're most motivated to master, the core values that you're willing to sacrifice for, that you stand for, needs, which are those compelling needs in the world that you want to contribute to, you want to impact.
That's great. I like those elements of purpose. Thank you. And then how do you take exploration of those elements into the next phase?
Yeah, I mean, just to step back for a second, it's like what we want to do is help people live engaged, meaningful, fulfilling lives. Like that is kind of the big thing. It's like we're seeing this mental health crisis happening in higher education and in high school as well. And now we're seeing this quiet quitting that is ravaging everything. And so we really got excited about the work because we recognize there's this subset of students and employees who are not quiet quitting. They're not burning out. They're super engaged in their work. They're still fired up to go to school. They go to work every single day. They have a lot of resilience. And what we found is those people have a sense of purpose. And we're using the definition of purpose as doing work that is both personally meaningful, but also contributes to the world at the same time. So it's valued in the world, but it's also valued in us. And so when people have a sense of purpose connected to their work, you know, they're doing better, they're more engaged, less likely to burn out, everything. And so I think the big challenge there is you have to know what's personally meaningful to you, and you have to know the contribution in the world you want to make. And then you have to find ways to pursue those things in work, which can be really, really hard. And so the way we break it down is we ask people, what are the strengths that you feel make you your best self? What are the skills that you want to be developing and getting better at? What are the values that you want to stand for in how you show up to work every day? And then ultimately, what contribution, what impact, what problems in the world do you want to be solving? And it's when people can identify these elements, and then they can look at their work and they say, are you using your strengths? Are you developing these new skills? Do you feel like you're working in a way that aligns with your values? And do you feel like your work is making a meaningful contribution to your organization, the world, or your family? When people can say yes to those questions, they're purposeful and they're showing up in a different way, and they're more successful, more engaged, and more thriving in their lives. But the big challenge is giving people the space to explore these big questions.
So I would love a story here. This would be a perfect spot to include a story about one of the people that you've studied or worked with through this information. Can you give me an example of somebody you took through these 4 questions?
Well, I mean, for me, one that really sticks out for me is I had 2 students who were best friends in this very working class area outside of Boston where I was working. And one of these students came in and he had straight A's and he was working super, super hard, and he wanted to go to the engineering school at Syracuse University. And I come in and I just ask him, why are you working so hard? And he tells me this amazing story about his dad was a day laborer. You know, he was working on roofs all day. He had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. to get to his work. And he was like, he barely saw his dad because his dad was leaving for work before he woke up, and he was coming home when he was almost going to bed. And he saw the physical impact that this day laborer had on his dad. And his dad didn't have to explain it to him, but his dad was making this huge sacrifice so that this student could have an opportunity to go to school and do something different from his dad. So when this student says, why do you want to go to Syracuse Engineering? He's like, well, I want to pay it forward from the impact that my dad had. I want to provide a better future for my kids as well. And I want them to be able to go do something that my family didn't have to do. That's purpose. But then I had a student come in right after this. Like I said, best friend, same demographic. Dad was a day laborer, you know, same area. This kid comes in super smart, articulate, hardworking, you know, very, very smart. I look at his GPA, he's almost failing. You're like, he's almost failing out. Yeah, but when you're talking to this kid, you're like, this kid is the captain of the baseball team. He's super charming. He's really worldly. And so what I saw on paper did not add up to what I was looking at in front of me. And so I start asking these questions. I say, like, your grades don't seem to reflect your potential here. And he's like, oh, yes, they do. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, you get good grades to go to college. And he's like, I do not want to go to college. And I asked why. And he says, my dad's a day laborer. He wakes up at 4:30 a.m. every single day. He is busting his back to make money. If I go to college, that's going to put immense debt on my family. That's going to make their lives worse. And so this kid had made an intentional decision to do just enough to get by. So he wasn't enough of a red flag where everyone was coming in to like put more energy on him. He just flew under the radar because he didn't want to put his family through the debt of college. Granted, that led to a conversation about financing college and more affordable options. But so say 2 kids, same mindsets, different sense of purpose in what school related to them. And it completely changed how they showed up in the work. And so it's what we call the purpose mindset. It is not about changing what you do. It's really understanding what are these elements of purpose, strengths, skills, impact, values, and how can you bring them to the work? And how can your work provide you opportunities to aligning what you do with these elements of purpose?
That's interesting. And the differences between those 2 people, those 2 best friends, I'm curious how comfortable they both were with their decisions, their goals.
Well, they had never thought about it, honestly. They had never been asked this question, why are you making the decisions you're making? They had never been asked. I worked with a ton of students, and Belle has too in Boston College. Why are you working so hard? We never ask people these questions. In the world of work, why do you want that promotion? Why do you want to move up? Why do you want these things? We assume we know the answer, but a lot of this rich work comes from like understanding our own intentions and our own motivations. And so that's kind of why, just because they'd never been asked it before. And it was really eye-opening for them when they had the opportunity to reflect on these things.
So Belle, let me turn things over to you for a moment. Thinking about our audience, the people that work for companies, the people are in the midst of their career, what's the first question that they could maybe ask themselves to see how on point they are with their purpose?
And we have several questions that we really use to help people orient to purpose. And the first is, how do you want to be remembered? And this is a question that really speaks to the strengths that make you your best self. So it maps onto strengths. A second question is, how do you want to grow? And that question really maps on to what are the skills that you are motivated to learn and master? The third question is, what do you stand for, or what do you want to stand for? And that really connects with your core values, the ones that you're willing to sacrifice for. And then the fourth question is, what needs do you want to impact? And that maps onto the contribution you want to be making in your workplace and in the world. Together, those 4 questions really help to inform the fifth question, which is, what are you called to? What are you called to is, what's your purpose? And, to know what you're called to, you have to ask yourself, where are the places, or what are the tasks or activities or projects that when you're working on them, you are able to answer the other 4 questions. So we really try to break the questions of purpose down to bite-sized chunks where people can begin to think about real life questions. And when it comes to what really motivates them in life.
And would it be fair to ask the 2 of you these questions? And can you demonstrate to our audience these questions in process?
Sure.
Tim, you want to take us? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Belle. Thank you.
Tim, even for today, how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah. So I'm answering that, and the way we're thinking, it's like, I have been thinking about is, how do you want to be remembered when I show up in meetings, when I talk with other people, when I'm teaching, when I'm on a podcast like this? And I think ultimately I want to be helpful and supportive and highly energetic. And that's the big thing here. And it's been a huge unlock for me. That simple little question is like, for the people in who are listening to this, try this for yourself. The next meeting you have, ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered after this meeting? What are the adjectives I wanted to use for people to describe me? When I'm not in the room, they're talking about you in that meeting. How do you want them to be describing me? Those are the strengths, right? And so for me, it's about being hopefully helpful and having a different perspective on something and hopefully offering up something different. So that's how I'm trying to show up in these meetings. I don't know if I'm achieving it, but that's the intention.
That is how you show up. And having the intention, I think, really enables you to be able to do that. So now, how is it different from the next question? How would you like to grow? How do you want to be growing?
Yeah, that for me is like, what do I want to be getting better at? And so, Belle and I, we're academics. We've been in established organizations for a long time. And I think I personally want to get better at, we're going off on our own and we're partnering with a whole bunch of colleges and high schools and organizations to be implementing our work. And that's a whole new skill set around time management and organizing complexity and juggling multiple things. And so as someone who was recently diagnosed with ADHD, it's become really, really important for me to develop what we call driver skills, which are all about self-management, self-regulation, and being able to organize. And so, our other two skill sets are around like being creative, critical thinking, problem solving, like using our minds. And the other one is around facilitation, which is engaging with other people and communicating. But for me, I've been really intentional on more organizational skills that I want to be developing. And I look for opportunities to be working on that every single day. Let me ask you one, Belle. Let me ask you one now. Because the next one that we ask is just in a general case, I think it's better. Like, what feels most important to you right now in time? What's most important to you?
So Tim and I talk about how there are the moment by moment answers to those questions. And then there's the long-term answer to those questions. So, moment by moment, I would say, is sometimes different than the long view. My long view answer to that question of what's important, I think really is to be doing work that has impact on their sense of purpose, like their ability to reach their full potential. And so what's important to me is to be somebody who is able to nurture that, is a safe place where they could be asking themselves the important questions in life, and, able to become their more authentic selves. That's the long view. Then we have her day-to-day answers to that. Like, as I said to Tim, like right now I have one daughter who is transitioning out of the home. She's getting ready to, she's moving to DC actually today. It's the first time that she's lived away from home because she went to college locally. And so what's important to me today is to be the most loving, best supportive parent that I can be, a friend to her. Somebody who is, she knows has got her back. Somebody who supports her even when I'm sad about the transition, that she knows that I'm for her and that I place her first. So I think that those long-term and those short-term values they're interconnected, and they're consistent. And yet there's a daily way that I live those out that are significant for me to check in, as well as to know what my long game is.
Yeah. And just, what purpose is. So people purpose is the secret weapon in work, school, and life. And it's just people with a sense of purpose. They're more motivated. They're more engaged. They're more successful. It's like every indicator of well-being is aligned with purpose. And it's like, you can tell when someone has purpose when they're not afraid to grapple with these really big questions about what contribution do you want to be making? How do you want to be remembered? And the reason Belle and I aren't afraid to do it is because we've been practicing it a long time. And it's because if I just, the people listening here, if we were in person, I just say, how do you want to be remembered as a person? Every single person we ask that to, it's deer in the headlights because we've never been trained to do that. And so I think the work that you're doing with the coaching and everything is literally, when it comes to purpose, the more you give yourself space to think, talk, write, and share about these big questions, the more likely you are to find answers to them. And the more likely you are to be able to find answers to them in your work Because when you can connect these elements of purpose to the work that you're doing, that's where purpose comes from. You don't need to be a C-level executive. You don't need to be the founder to have the purpose. Belle's research has found anyone on any spectrum, no matter where you are in a hierarchy, can have a sense of purpose. So we'll stop there. I know we've been going on and on there, but
I love these ideas, and I find myself answering the questions myself as the two of you were talking back and forth. So thank you very much. And I'm also thinking about the fact that, asking somebody what their purpose is and questions such as that makes it sound like everybody, quote, should, unquote, have some sort of career that is altruistic and giving and, something that leads to a better world. When in fact, we have all kinds of purpose in this world. We have people that are in charge of accounting, people that are in charge of marketing, people that are in charge of, craft services, the catering and other types of work that doesn't lead to, quote, a better world or something that improves the ecosystem, but yet is still really valuable because we all have a need, or there are a tremendous variety of needs in the corporate world and what we have to fulfill. Have you run into anybody that struggled with their purpose because they thought it was too technical or too not related to making the world better? Kind of curious about that.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, one of the things that's important is to recognize that the definition of purpose is simply to be living a life that is personally meaningful and intending to contribute to the world beyond oneself. And so that is a very broad and general definition that's not hard to live by, because all of those roles that you just described in some shape or form, depending on the individual, can be contributing to the world beyond oneself. So purpose isn't necessarily like, addressing world hunger or solving climate problems in the world. It's a way of contributing in that is not judged by others. It's not, the Good Works Olympics here and who's making the biggest impact, but are you living a life where you are doing things that are personally meaningful and you are intending to contribute? That might be in your vocation, in your job, or you might be making those contributions in your family. You might be making a contribution to a sibling who really needs you. You might be making a contribution to your neighborhood in some way by picking up trash that's, litter on the side. That, our definition of purpose is like, do you have these elements at work in somewhere in your life? And work is one place where, it can be incredibly meaningful when in your job, you can draw a connection to the work you're doing and why it's personally meaningful. It might not be like every single second of your work day that you feel like your work is meaningful, because we know that work has many tedious aspects, even if it's the most enjoyable work to you. But are there aspects of that work that are personally meaningful? Moments during the week where you experience that personal meaning. And at the same time, are there aspects of your work that you are doing because you intend to contribute to someone outside of yourself? That could be your colleague, who you help to pinch hit one day. It could be your boss, or, it could be somebody, that you're working with as a client outside of your workplace. So, really is not, that the work itself has to be judged by everybody else as making a contribution. It is your interpretation of, are you doing work that's personally meaningful and a contribution in or out of your workplace?
I would argue though, that like every single role can and should have a purpose though. So it's like, people listening here, why does your organization exist? Like, why doesn't it exist as an organization? What impact is it trying to have? What contribution is it trying to have on the world? you should be able to answer that. And if you can't answer it, that is a deficit of leadership right there. And like just trying to maximize shareholder value is not a contribution in the world. Okay. So it's like you need to be existing for something, like you were trying to add value in some sort of way. And so if your organization is adding value in some sort of way and you're an accountant, well, you're playing a critical role in helping to make sure that that organization can achieve its mission. And even if you are an accountant, what's the role of accounting? That is to make sure that like all our ducks in a row. It's providing financial security and stability. It's making sure that like what we think and feel is aligning with the actual numbers, you know? And so we hear, for whatever reason, accounting all the time. It always comes up. And it's like accountants provide people financial stability and security. And so if you ask any single person, how stable and secure do you want to feel in your finances? That's a critical role for accountants. And so I think if people are listening to this and they hear the part about contributing to the world beyond the self, it's like, one, what is the contribution that your organization is making? And if you're not sure, that's a question that needs to happen within the organization. Two, if you feel like a lot of your job requirements or what you're doing doesn't seem to be contributing to that mission, you need to talk to someone and be like, why are we doing this? How does this contribute to the greater mission of the organization? Help me connect the dots between what I am doing and the larger whole. And if your leaders can't do that, these are all red flags and these are warning signs. And so just to Belle's point too, it can be about just being a good team player. Like the contribution you want to make is being a good coworker. It's being someone who's helpful in team meetings. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be these very, very tiny things, which is normally how purpose shows up. But it really can happen anywhere. And if you're really, really struggling, again, it might be a bigger question to have within your organization.
What Tim is saying is really important. And I think it speaks to leadership. As Tim was saying, if you are working somewhere where you're not clear on what the purpose is, that's a failure in leadership. And, we're seeing right now this very, wide sweeping phenomenon of quiet quitting. And, before that, we were calling it great migration and the great questioning. These are all, symptoms of a loss of purpose and belonging, a questioning around whether or not there's a purpose and belonging. And so part of what we speak to in our book is how can leaders of organizations really be taking the lead in doing some of this raising of questions around what one's purpose is in the organization, what the organization's purpose is, in order to, get people excited again about, waking up in the morning to a role that is meaningful and also an organization or a community to which they belong. So those are two critical components of doing work where you can sustain that work. You are retained because you feel a sense of purpose and belonging in your workplace.
Wow. Tim, Belle, you have given us a lot to think about today. Thank you. I'm thinking about purpose and I'm thinking about the messages received about the purpose of the organization and how the purpose of my role fits into that bigger organizational goals and purpose and drive. So thank you very much. Luckily, I'm clear in how my role fits into the larger organization. And I hope our audience members can take what you said and apply it to their own roles and think about what they want to do. And I agree that these are really big questions that not everybody is asked at the outset of their career or even along the way. And sometimes we don't ask these questions of ourselves until we maybe hit a roadblock of some sort. And so I do encourage our audience members to ask yourselves these questions now. Everybody that's listening, if you'd like to learn more, the name of the book is How to Navigate Life, The New Science of Finding Your Way in School, Career, and Beyond, with Belle Liang and Timothy Klein. And I highly recommend this book. I can't wait to learn more from both of you as I get to know you better and dig into the book a little bit more. Thank you both for being here. Belle, thank you for being here on a day when your personal life is in transition with your daughter moving out. That's big. It really is. And so I appreciate your attention and your time today. Tim, thank you for being here. I know that you have a lot going on in your life as well. So thank you both.
Thanks
for having us.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here today. We can't wait to see you on the next episode of the Randstad RiseSmart Career Podcast. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Randstad RiseSmart Career Podcast, helping you transform your everyday work life into an exciting and rewarding career. I thank our expert today and encourage you to tune in for our next episode where we continue talking about how you can identify your career passions, set your career goals, and achieve everything you want to work toward in your career. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your colleagues. You can also follow me at KJ Schneiderman, that's KJSCHNEIDERMAN, on Twitter or on YouTube on the RiseSmart Career channel. You can also sign up for coaching services in the Randstad RiseSmart portal so you can directly benefit from everything we talk about.